So our next segment of our work today or tonight is the part of a critical incident stress. Many of you, you have been involved in critical incident stress. Some of you have been in severe accidents in the past, things you cannot forget, things that really bothers you, things that really cramps you up. You know, things that's so painful, you just want to forget it. You can turn to page 68 if you want to follow your manual. And if you don't have a manual by now, it's a problem. You need to get a manual. You need to ask me on the group or ask someone on the group just to reshare the manual, because it's on the group there. You can have it at your disposal anytime, and it's for free. The manual. Don't worry about paying for the manual. You can also use the manual at your own. You know, you need to give copyright, of course. Remember copyright. You need to copy the manual right. Don't copy it wrong. Give just recognize the Church of God. What is critical incident stress? Now, this is a stress that goes beyond the normal things. You know, it's a stress that goes beyond anything you can ever imagine. I mean, come on. Did anybody of you imagine this? You know, on the 11th of September 2001. Can you remember that? I was sitting in my office in the Metropolis. I was at that stage what was I? I cannot remember. I think I was a trauma officer for the department. Yes, something like that. But a chaplain, of course. So I was sitting, and then the management calls us all in and says, "Come and have a look here. What happened in America?" This shocked us so bad. I spent hours in front of the television set to monitor and to see what's happening and all the stories afterwards. You know, that was going on, and still today there's a lot of conspiracies about what happened at the Twin Towers. The fact is, 2,800 people died. It's a lot of people who die. It overwhelms your normal coping skills also. It overwhelms the way you normally would take care of things. I mean, it is seen as having life-changing consequences also. Many people's lives have completely been disarranged. Their lives has been destroyed by this attack, or the terrorist attack, when that planes hit the Twin Towers. There's some definitions, and that's just for your, you know, for your knowledge. It's not so important, but to know what you know, critical stress is about. It's any situation beyond the realm of a person's usual experience that overwhelms his or her sense of vulnerability and lack of control over the situation. That is what Roger Solomon, PhD, said. That is copyright, you see. That's what we call copyright. We copy the things right here. And then Jeff Mitchell, the guy we're working with the Critical Incident Stress Management Program, he says it's any situation faced by emergency service personnel that causes them to experience unusually strong emotional reactions which have the potential to interfere with their ability to function, either at the scene or even later. And it doesn't stop here. There's some more shorter definition, but this long one also. But Daniel A. Goldbrough, he said it's a life experience or series of experiences that so seriously upsets the balance of the individual that it creates changes in the person's emotional, cognitive, as well as behavioral function. Can you see this is what happened during trauma, the trauma people experience in COVID times? People's whole way of seeing things changed. I mean, it changed them cognitively as well as behavioral. The simplest definition, and I think you can remember this, but the simplest definition I'm sorry, just a moment, please. Hello? Perhaps actually class. All right, what's up? Bye. Okay, bye. It's kind of weird. My wife always knows. I tell her when I come to class, and she phones me. But then, guys, it's not such a big crisis. It's not a crisis on call. Don't worry. Um, I forgot to tell you this about this. So when a person goes ballistic because of the trauma event, That is a normal reaction. Did you hear me, Chaplain? When a person goes ballistic because of trauma, that is normal to a person. It's a normal reaction in an abnormal event. I can give you this example of the crisis counseling I just did earlier today. I mean, this person went ballistic when I came there, and that's normal. I didn't try to calm him down. I didn't try to soothe and dry the tears. He had to cry. He had to scream. He had to do all of this because of the trauma he experienced. Because that's what it is. It's a normal reaction when you go ballistic in a time of crisis. Then we have critical incidents, line of duty, death, injuries, or shootings. Um, I mean, you can just do a study on this because this all identifies with critical incidents. I mean, when you look at a line of death or an injury or a shooting incident at the job, that all relates to critical incidents at the job, at the workplace. Now, this picture was taken on 9/11, 2001, when that twin buildings fell. Um, so also highlights the officer's own mortality when they are in pain and when they are critical, cognitively disrupted, and so on and so forth. Then also suicide of a coworker causes critical incident and is marked as a critical incident because when you lose your colleague due suicide, that's a critical incident. It can happen to anyone. It can happen even to us. It's like pressures of the job and personal life. Sometimes guilt will develop. It turns the world completely upside down. It comes to show that Leo, like remember Leo the other day, is a law enforcement officer, is a normal person reacting to an abnormal event. Some years back, 3 officers got shot in a heist in Attersville when I was still a chaplain in the Metro Police. It was horrific for me. It was 3 guys shot with AK-47s in one of those big vans, bulletproof vans. They just went through the metal. I mean, come on! And the one guy was shot in the head, the other one was shot in the arm, and the other one was shot in the upper torso. Of course, the one with the head injury, he died on the scene. And I had to go and break the news to his mom and dad. And years after, when they will see me in town, when they will see me at the wreath laying ceremony or whatever, when they see me as the chaplain, they would start crying because I remember them of their son because I came and brought them the news. Can you see how critical incidents can impact a person for the rest of your life? Some people would say, I wish I did more for my colleague and not allowed her to go on that trip. Once a colleague, in my life, well, many years back also, a colleague shot himself. I mean, what happened was it's her, I'm sorry. She shot herself at home, but what happened was at the office after the investigation, we found it out. We may investigate these things also because we need to try and find out why did she do this. I mean, what happened? Why did nobody see this coming? So we found it out that she was under pressure at her workplace. A marriage wasn't the best marriage in the world, but a marriage was not the cause and the reason why she committed suicide. She just couldn't handle the stress at work. Or rather, that was how she felt and couldn't deal with it anymore. And she just shot herself in the head and died on the scene. That's a critical incident. So critical incident also means it's a death or a serious injury to a child. I mean, when a child is injured, it pushes you way beyond and way over the edge of things. I mean, it sometimes is viewed unfair. My goodness. And so often we will get the opportunity as chaplains to engage with people that lost a child. I think it was 2 days back, I had an engagement with a person and a talk with a person, a male person, and he was a little bit frustrated. They've got one child and they love the child to pieces. And I asked him, will you have another? He said, oh no. He cannot understand why God would allow an unborn child of 7 months to die. So his wife had a miscarriage some years back, and they decided to never try again for a second baby. And the reason for that is because this critical incident changes changed everything about them and how they would perceive a next child, So they would rather spend all of their worth and value on this one child that's now about 12 years old. So can you see the pain that's been going, and being carried all through these years because of the loss of life? And he of course viewed it as being unfair, because he asked me this question: why would God allow a child to die? And then there's some other factors of identification. When we note identification, we identify certain things, as being critical and as being painful. So one critical incident can cause your whole life to change. Then we have the prolonged failed rescue attempt. Many people will have drug abuse. Some people will have, they will be having spent all of their life invested in the person, and 5 or 10 years down the line, after this you've tried this rescue attempt and it failed. I wonder who's the one who needs absolute rescue. Absolute need to succeed should not form part of us, because we can fail, because humans fail. There's one a rehab center here in town. Now this lady, she's got a heart of gold. The manager of the care center, of the rehab center. There's one guy, I won't mention his name, but maybe someday in the future this video will be out or somewhere and somebody would watch it. But this guy, he's been in and out the rehab center for I think 5 to 7 times. I saw him on the street yesterday again. And imagine the trauma the house manager would feel, because she loves the children in there. She loves every person in there. Of course, this will create a lot of trauma in her life. And then we have the mass casualties incidents, like a train accident, a flight accident, or whatever. The enormity of the situation can be more than the ability to cope. When you see all of these dead bodies, you just imagine yourself, I cannot do this. When you come to a traffic scene where a bucky overturned with a lot of workers on the back, nobody can comprehend these things. Nobody can stand positive and feel that you're in control of this. It will change your life. And even when you're a secondary victim on such a scene, it can also impact you in a negative way, because you can also have flashbacks when you drive past that incident and so on. Safety is unusually jeopardized in a critical incident. I remember some years back, we had a traffic accident with one of our officers. They were standing off on a traffic accident. So they normally do not call us if it's just a normal traffic accident, but when there's death on the road, they call the chaplain. But this time around, they didn't call us for the people who made the accident in the first place. They called us for the officers that were killed on the scene. They would the people the drunk guy that when he approached the accident scene, the already accident scene on the freeway, he didn't come to a complete stop, of course, because he was drunk, and he killed the officer. And that happens because some people's safety is jeopardized because of other people's critical incident. And even so be it, when I went to this specific house earlier today and entered their critical incident, my safety was also jeopardized because this guy was ballistic. He was angry. I could sense it. Even if he's a Christian, sometimes you will cognitively lose control. Emotionally, you will lose control. And some others, they will face the underbelly of life daily, like the ESPs. They face this underbelly of the world daily. Vulnerability and lack of control can trigger also a critical incident. So when you have a weak moment, a moment or a desperate moment, and a lack of that control, and just to think about that can trigger the whole incident again in your life. That flashback will become real. It's not only a perception, but you were there. So a victim is known to the responder also sometimes can create confusion and can create a lot of pain for the responder. When the responder comes to the scene, especially when it's an ESP, emergency services personnel, or even a fire officer or a chaplain for that matter, or a pastor. When you know the victim, it's painful. You're not prepared to, you're not prepared for this, and you feel responsible for what just happened. You've just seen the person, he just left your office, or he just left the building, or he just left the workplace. Or if only I would have gotten there sooner, I may have changed what just happened in the meantime. So the magnitude of the response speaks of three groupings in this regard, according to Daniel Goldwart, PhD, and Gary Omeler, PhD. They say it speaks of those who experience little to no reaction. That's the magnitude of the response. This is the three groupings. And the second group is those who experience moderate symptoms. So you get the first one, they experience little, and the second one's moderate. And then we have the ones experiencing severe symptoms, like the 17 symptoms I've mentioned earlier of the post-traumatic stress disorder. They can experience these kind of symptoms, sometimes even later. Then the nature of the event, if the responder remains in control at the scene, the less the event will affect them. So if you're a first responder, you need to stay in control of this event, because it will help you to work through the pain of what just happened. Then the degree of the warning, less warning often leads to a more severe response. Warning provides the responder with time to develop a coping strategy. The ego, strength, and coping style, our personality plays a role in our ability to cope. That's what it does. This is due in part to genetics, but also it is impacted by past experiences. So when you're experienced in a certain way, you can handle stress better. Philosophical and spiritual beliefs also play a role in coping with any kind of stress out there. Did you hear that? So when you're a believer, it helps you to cope with stress in a better way. Then we have the prior mastery of similar experiences. Many of us, we have had that. We always say, I've done it, got the t-shirt, I'm finished with that. But practice makes perfect. One of my theological teachers said, I think it was 1994 somewhere. Yes, I can remember that. She always said, she was the Sunday school teacher, professor, and she said, practice makes perfect, yes, but good guided practice makes perfect. You need to find good guided practice. Success in a past similar experience will build confidence and cause the responder to think more clearly and positively about what happened, because he's got this past experience. Also, the proximity speaks to the magnitude of the response and the contributions of thereof. This has to do with the involvement. The more involved in the incident the responder is, the greater the impact on their personal lives. There is also a psychological factor, such as having a child the same age that died on the scene, and past experiences seemingly unrelated may cause stress symptoms for the responder. We also have the amount of stress in one's life. If a responder is experiencing a high level of stress in their personal life, it can and will obviously affect their ability to cope with this incident, and also with other incidents that may follow. And the nature and degree of support available to the responder after this incident, because they will need support after the incident. They will need your guidance. They will need some counseling or even debriefing. The responder's willingness to accept support is important. If they push others away under the guise of I can handle it, or they need to know it can affect anyone. But we need to be there for them. Support comes from peers, it comes from supervisors, it comes from chaplains like you and I, as well as professionals, as well as family members. So we can create them and advise them to create themselves a net of supporters to help them through their crisis. There's some reactions. People will react in different ways. We'll have the first reaction, and that is the acute reaction, like acute stress, the acute stress syndrome. Remember when we discussed that in a previous segment? But in this regard, the first reaction they'll have is an acute reaction. This shows up shortly after this incident just happened, shortly. I mean, the next day or the day after. But this is good. This is a good kind of thing because you clear up what caused the symptoms. You're clear about it. I mean, you're clear that the reason why you feel like depressed today is because the accident occurred yesterday or the death you witnessed happened yesterday. And then when you're in the acute reaction or in the acute time frame, you know, support would be on the highest level. For example, we used in our previous segment on acute stress syndrome, we used the fact that when everybody's still there after the death of a loved one, and you're busy with the preparation, that is the acute stress. This is the acute reaction on the traumatic event. Then support will be at its highest because everybody's still around. Individual is more open to receiving help at that point. But then the next reaction is the delayed reaction. Now, symptoms may appear up to a few months later. You know, you wouldn't even think about these things after this one last straw hit you. Symptoms may appear at once or pile on through time. Not a clear association between event and symptoms, and the responder feels they are going crazy because they don't understand what they're going through. They do not connect this symptoms with what happened a few months back. They do not connect those. You know, that's why it's important to deal with the critical incident stress at your earliest convenience, but when you're still in the acute phase. Because when you get over to the delayed reaction or the delayed phase, then after a few months, you won't even remember sometimes what happened, but it will still be in your mind. But at this stage, they will not likely seek help. You know, they will be less likely to seek any help. Then we have the third reaction, and that's the last reaction, and that's the cumulative stress reaction. We have the cumulative stress disorder. Remember, we discussed it a while back. But this is repeated exposure contributes to the response of this person. Whenever, you know, when you're repeating it daily, like the ESPs, they're repeating daily accidents. Every day there's people bleeding in their ambulances. The longer a person serves as a first responder, the greater number of critical incidents or events they will have experienced in their life. And these people are the most difficult ones to help. So can you see? It is easy to help a person on an acute level. And even not so difficult, but also difficult on a delayed level. But when they come to this point of the cumulative stress reaction or disorder, then it will be much more difficult to help these people. These symptoms come from out of the blue. All of a sudden, they may have self-doubt and fear that they are losing their minds, they're losing it. And also many questions their ability to do their job, and yet do not think of seeking help themselves. And this wraps it up for tonight. I see we're way before our closing time, but thank you. Is there any questions? Any questions out there for me? All right. Remember now, I will send you a video tomorrow so that you can have some work to do, because we'll be discussing two segments. It's critical incident stress management. I will send you a video, as well as prayer in the public forum. And at both in that segments, you'll get about 13 or 14 points of questions for your exam. Well, if there have been no questions, thank you for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. May the Lord bless you all. May you have a good night. Shalom.